What follows is a video about the tabletop role-playing game Blades in the Dark, written and created by John Harper and published by Evil Hat Publishing. All art is used with permission by John Harper.
Over a millennia of imperial expansion, the city of Duskwall has evolved from a simple coal mining settlement on the cold north coast into the dark, glittering crown jewel of Akaros. Welcome back to the Nerdy Breakdown. We're your hosts. I'm Cuckoo.
And I'm Lou.
Today we'll dive into the rich histories, cultures, and languages of this not-so-fair city, as well as its seasons, its weather, and how its calendar is broken up into months, weeks, days, and hours, slightly differently than our own. So please, sit back and enjoy.
The beginnings of Doskvol was a meager affair, but an old one. 160 years before the Cataclysm, the original Skav kingdom established a coal mining settlement on a river delta. It would eventually grow into a small port town over several generations, and would continue growing for a millennia.
Less than 2 centuries after Duskwall's founding, a world-rending cataclysm occurred. Earthquakes and volcanic eruptions shatter the world's continents, giving rise to the Shattered Isles, and legions of vengeful spirits and other horrors were unleashed upon the hapless survivors. Almost all of these survivors, including the residents of the mining town, swear eternal fealty to the immortal emperor in exchange for his much-needed magical protection. The settlements the empire safeguards begin to salvage what they can from the ruins, beginning the long process of rebuilding from the cataclysm's desolation.
Not all was lost, however, with some lost knowledges and technologies managing to be restored by 2 centuries after the great calamity that broke the gates of death. This, in large part, was due to schools established by the great immortal emperor, and filled with works of scholarly pursuits that had been saved from certain destruction. During this same period, Doskvol becomes the main nautical training center for the fledgling empire.
The Great Deluge plagues the 223rd year of the Imperial era. Rising water from torrential rains floods the mines of rapidly growing Doskvol, killing hundreds. These mines essentially become defunct tombs for several centuries, until more advanced steam-driven machines are employed to restore them to their former glory.
Over 300 years later, an event would happen that would shape the world and Doskvol to come in a major way. The first Leviathan hunters successfully hunt, harvest, and refine a batch of Leviathan blood, a precious resource that the modern-day Empire and Doskvol runs on.
5 years after this first successful harvest, refined Leviathan blood is used to construct the first prototype lightning barriers around Duskwall, originally only encircling the district that will later be known as Charter Hall. The Immortal Emperor decrees that these technological lightning barriers must be constructed around all cities of the Imperium, replacing the waning protective sorceries that once preserved them.
In the 809th year of the Imperial era, the vast majority of refining of Leviathan blood was moved to the factory town of Lockport in Scotland. The Scotlanders objected to the Imperial decree that subjected them to the toxic fallout from the industrial processes of the refining industries, insisting that they weren't subject to the Emperor's decrees. The Scotlanders claimed a new king and demanded that the Empire withdraw all processing centers. The Empire ignored them, and instead sent troops and more workers to continue building refineries. The Scotts established a militia force under King Aldrich, and the Unity War began in earnest. A full 2,000 Scotlander refugees would flee to the closest port town in the Isle of Akaros, Duskwall.
After 36 years of hard-fought intercontinental war, the Scotlander Queen Elaine and her husband are killed by assassins. This brings a merciful end to the Unity War, as Scotland surrenders and rejoins the Empire. The present day of our story, and of the game in general, takes place just 2 years after the Unity War, in 847 IE. The city of Duskwall truly has a rich history, and it has survived in the face of cataclysm, floods, war, and so many more tribulations over the last millennia. All of these events and more have really come together to shape the city's unique mix of cosmopolitan rapport and tribalistic strife, its fusion of many disparate cultures and traditions.
The most common heritage found in Doskvol is the Akarosi people, which makes sense given Duskwall is in their homeland. The Akarosi are diverse and resemble the different groups across Western and Eastern Europe. The Akarosi people claim the same heritage as the immortal emperor himself and base titles of nobility around this heritage. Akarosian is the most spoken tongue in Duskwall and is also known as Imperial. It's considered the common tongue of the Empire, and it's nuanced and expressive. It's perfect for either poetry or for legal documents.
Scavlanders are the second most common race found across Duskwall. They are indigenous to the frozen north and resemble the peoples and cultures of Scandinavia and northern Anglo-Saxons. Throughout the Unity War, the city has filled with Scavlander refugees, building them up to represent a large proportion of Duskwall's working-class laborers and skilled craftspeople. Certain Akarosi look down on Scavlanders for the Unity War, some even seeing them as traitors, and as a result they can be treated poorly by Akarosi natives at times. Scavlanders speak Skavic, the clipped, direct mother tongue of their homeland across the sea. The city's ancient name comes from the old Skavic word Doskvol, which literally translates to the Skav's coal mine. There is some disagreement among the citizenry as to whether to pronounce the city's name in the old Skavic fashion, Doskvol, as the more contemporary Duskwall, the shadowy simplified slang name of the Dusk, or even as its imperial nautical designation of North Hook.
Aruvians are a wealthy and powerful dominion to the south whose people and cultures resemble the diverse groups across Egypt, Persia, and India. Aruvians claim nobility via an ancient pact with the emperor. They are the third most populous group of people in Duskwall. They also maintain an influential consulate and keep a close eye on their stake in the Leviathan hunter fleet. They speak a rare language in Duskwall, Hadrathi, an ancient tongue found mostly in musty old tomes but still spoken among some. Others favor it for its scathing, elaborate expletives.
So it seems that the city's natives are Akarosi, with a good number of Aruvians and Scavlanders also among the city's population. I did notice that this section of the book didn't make specific mention of a couple other races of people we saw in our last video, that being the Tykerosi and Dagger Islanders. Why do you think that is, Loon?
I think mostly because probably their populations are a lot smaller. But even though the book doesn't explicitly mention them in their own paragraph, I think for sure peoples from the Dagger Isle and Tykeros would have made their way all over the world too. And for sure even to Dustfall, even if their numbers are fairly insignificant when compared to the larger populations of the main three. We know for sure there are at least a few that have made it to Duskfall. There's a merchant in Night Market named Jira from the Dagger Isles, and he is well respected in the underworld for the quality blades that they sell, and many street toughs aspire to one day owning a Jira blade.
Talking about Night Market, that reminds me of Roland Valeris. He's this wealthy Tykerosi social club proprietor, and he's known for his permissive policies towards the arcane and unusual. It really seems like Tykerosi and Dagger Islander citizens have a significant impact on the culture of the city, even if there are fewer of them represented here than some of the other races.
Now let's move on from cultural and lingual influences of the city and discuss its climate. Northern Akaros, where Dustfall lies, is cold, rainy, and windy throughout most days of the year, and its citizens bundle up in heavy coats, scarves, gloves, and hats, which is convenient for concealing a scoundrel's tools of the trade. A thick fog blankets the city at twilight and just after dawn, obscuring streetlights and ruining visibility in what some citizenry refer to as the blind hour, the perfect time of day to take a break indoors with a warm cup of mushroom tea.
Generally, the north of Akaros experiences 3 distinct seasons: a frigid winter during the months of Elisar and Mendar, a windy and rainy spring, including the months of Calavet and Saran, and a storm-addled fall, consisting of Ulsavet and Volnavet. While not an official season, late Saran through early Volnavet is often referred to as hunting season, a time of year where leviathans are most active in the Northern Sea, and when hunters bring in 80% of their annual haul. These 6 months we previously mentioned, Mendar, Calavet, Saran, Ulsavet, Volnavet, and Elisar, consist of 60 days each, and thereby evenly divide the imperial calendar. Rumor has it that they were named to honor lands and peoples lost to the world during the Cataclysm, although none now live who remember them, except, of course, maybe the immortal emperor himself, who supposedly named them.
The days of the week are not named as in our own calendar, but are simply referred to by the day of the month they fall on. Let's meet on the 21st, or I'll see you on the 18th. Some particular days, however, are named due to particular regional customs or practices. In Duskwall, the first day of each week is Market Day, where traders put out their new selection of wares. In Crowsfoot, on the second day of each week, we have Home Day, when prisoners are usually released. Commission Day happens in the Docks District, when superstitious sailors launch new ships on the third day of each week. Requiem in Charter Hall, where on the fourth day of the week, wills and testaments are prosecuted. In Char Hollow, on the fifth day, there is Dust Day, when the food stores of the poor start to run thin. And in Brightstone, the richer part of town, they have Carillon, where operas and symphonies are performed on the sixth day of the week.
On top of those basic weekly traditions, there are a few days of celebration that more closely resemble the holidays of our own world. Moontide is an informal holiday practiced on the last day of each month, loosely based around an old folk practice for honoring a forgotten sky deity. But nowadays it's really just an excuse to skip work and drink. The Spirit Wardens as an institution are honored for their grim task of ghost elimination on a holiday known as Arkenvorn. And a holiday simply known as Gratitude leaves opportunity to give thanks for the immortal Emperor's salvation of the Shattered Isles. Doskvol serves as an opportunity to celebrate the birthday of the city itself and anyone born within its walls. And the relatively newfound holiday of Unison is a perfect chance for citizens to celebrate, or even curse, the end of the Unity War with Skavlan. The days themselves, holidays or otherwise, are divided into two parts by the weak twilight that glitters at dawn and dusk. While the 12 hours after dawn are numbered like a usual clock, the 12 hours after dusk are sometimes named according to local custom. In Doskvol, the hours of the night are named Honor, Song, Silver, Thread, Flame, Pearls, Silk, Wine, Ash, Coal, Chains, and Smoke. You might tell a friend to meet you at the tavern at the hour of song. Keeping time, either hours, days, or months, is quite difficult given the constant darkness, but most cities ring public chimes on the hour, every hour, to keep things running smoothly.
So as you can probably tell, Duskwall has had a rich and varied history, and it remains to its present day a diverse and cosmopolitan city made up of all the races and peoples in its world, all fighting and clawing out their own little niche of survival in a darkened world full of ghosts, criminals, and ne'er-do-wells. It's a dreary, dark place where you've got to be at least a little bit tough to survive. Even the weather is harsh most of the year. In the next video, we'll get into how people have adapted to living in this ever-present darkness, the lights, the food, and the energy that powers it all. We've been the Nerdy Breakdown. I'm Loon.
And I'm Cuckoo.
And we'll see you next time.